That's exactly what happened to me that Tuesday morning when I was polishing the marble in the lobby of the Grand Plaza, and the manager, Sandra Morrison, was already on her third meltdown of the day. She was pacing back and forth, heels snapping against the floor, yelling about that Asian woman disrupting the reception for over 40 minutes. Unmoving, with an expression that said she'd had enough of everything and everyone in that room. Her assistant kept tapping at his phone, probably canceling deals worth more than my annual salary. But the whole time, 3 translators were sweating bullets, flipping through phrasebooks, saying stuff like, "She doesn't speak Mandarin, Korean, or Thai. I've tried it all." Meanwhile, Sandra kept hissing at the concierge, "This is turning into an international scandal," while the junior receptionist whispered, "If she leaves, we're finished." And all I could do was mop in circles and try to look invisible, the way you do when you're a black woman in a 5-star hotel, because trust me, being invisible was safer than being seen. But you know how sometimes you lock eyes with someone, and in that moment, you both know exactly what's happening, even if nobody else gets it? That's what happened when I looked at the Japanese businesswoman. There was something in her stare, a mix of pride, frustration. Not after everything I'd been through. The years scrubbing floors while people talked around me like I was part of the furniture. The nights I spent learning languages because I believed being smart would get me somewhere. Sandra was about to explode. "If we don't resolve this in the next 15 minutes, I'm canceling the presidential suite," she hissed. Imagine the financial loss. That's when the Japanese woman started speaking, rapid, elegant, not a word anyone understood. In my best Kyoto accent, offered her coffee in Japanese, then asked if there was anything I could help with. The look on her face, pure shock, then relief, then a sort of cautious hope, said everything. The businesswoman turned to her and, in perfect English, said, "The only scandal here is your behavior, Miss Morrison." Yeah, that happened. The air got icy. Guests started murmuring. You could see the realization dawn on everyone's faces. This wasn't about language, it was about respect. And then, right when you thought the scene was over, Marcus Johnson, the only other black manager at the hotel, stepped forward. He'd been watching the whole time, quiet but alert. "Perhaps we should allow our guest to be assisted by someone competent," he said, giving Sandra a look that said he'd had enough too. But Sandra was losing her mind, ranting, "This woman is creating an international scandal." That's when the businesswoman, Akiko Tanaka, turned to me, thanked me in Japanese, and started explaining everything that had gone wrong. I sorted out the reservation in 10 minutes flat. Sandra tried to regain control, announcing, "Denise Washington, you're suspended." But by then, she had lost the room. The businesswoman pulled out her phone and, in front of everyone, "And I sit on the International Tourism Board. A bad review from me, and your chain loses far more than one reservation." Marcus explained, gently but firmly, that hotel lobbies are public spaces. And yes, the cameras had recorded everything, too. Sandra went pale. Her phone rang. Her supervisor, no doubt already watching the meltdown on security footage. She stammered and offered me a position as coordinator of intercultural relations at her American office. 90 grand a year, full benefits. I almost dropped the mop right there. Sandra was fired on the spot. Her humiliation complete. As she left, all the admiration her colleagues once had for her turned to contempt. But the real twist? 6 months later, I was in my own office, overseeing diversity programs and mentoring young talents. Like a Latina intern I'd found scrubbing floors, just like me, but fluent in 4 languages. Marcus had come over to join me at the new company. Together we built programs that became models for the whole industry. Meanwhile, the Grand Plaza became a case study in how not to run a business. Sandra, once feared and respected, was now infamous. Her career in ruins, her face forever linked to the viral video of her disgrace. Akiko Tanaka, now a minority investor, made sure the hotel changed for real. Diversity programs, new management, promotions based on merit, not prejudice. Over sushi one afternoon, Akiko said to me, "What makes me most proud isn't just helping you find your place, but proving that when you recognize true diversity, everyone wins." And I thought back to that day, realizing the power wasn't just in standing up, but in showing what excellence really looks like, even when no one expects it from you. People ask about Sanders sometimes. She works in a department store now. I hope she learns something about humility, but real justice isn't about crushing your enemies. It's about making space for new beginnings. Sometimes the only way to rewrite the rules is to stop being invisible and show the world what you're really made of. So let me ask you, if you've ever been overlooked, disrespected, or made to feel invisible, what would you do in my shoes? Would you speak up? Would you risk it all? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about what real justice, real courage, and real community look like, because sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to stay silent to change everything. You ever think about how a single moment, one sharp break in the middle of your ordinary life, can echo for months, years, maybe even forever? That's what I kept coming back to in the months after that wild day at the Grand Plaza, sitting in my glass-walled office at Tanaka Technology International, breathing in the city from 40 floors up, wondering how everything could flip so fast and whether it could ever really last. Sometimes I'd wake up before dawn, hands still itching for the weight of the old mop, and for a split second, I'd forget the view, the suits, the meetings in 3 languages before lunch. I'd forget who I'd become and remember who I'd had to be just to survive. It's funny. The ones who had smiled at Sandra's jokes and rolled their eyes at problem guests, they hated the new training, the new hiring rules, the mandatory cultural workshops. Some left quietly. A few got loud online, playing the victim for likes, twisting the story so they'd look like the casualties of wokeness gone mad. The funniest thing is, none of them ever mentioned the truth. The bellhop who used to nod at me but never knew my name. The receptionist who avoided eye contact after everything went viral. Some looked embarrassed, others grateful. One, after a long pause, actually hugged me in a parking lot, whispering, "I wish I'd spoken up, too." You know what I told her? You still can. But the real shock came when Marcus called me late one night, his voice low, a bit shaken. "Denise, Sandra Morrison is in the news again." I thought, Lord, what now? Turns out, a local station had tracked her down for an exclusive. There she was, pale and shrunken in a borrowed jacket, talking about how she'd lost everything. Her job, her friends, her sense of purpose. The host tried to bait her into blaming me, or Akiko, or the Times themselves, but she didn't bite. Instead, she looked right at the camera and said, "I made my own choices. I hurt people. Now I live with it." For a split second, I almost felt sorry for her. But then, as always, the world did what it does. It moved on. People forgot. The outrage faded. The story became just another link in the chain of scandals that are only shocking until the next one hits. But for the people in that lobby that day, something changed for good. Twist is, Akiko Tanaka didn't just invest in the Grand Plaza. She made it a proving ground, a kind of living experiment in what happens when you force a place to actually look at itself. Every 3 months. If you want to change the face of an industry, she told me once, you start by listening to the people who know what pain looks like. But not all the pushback came from inside. The local business association started getting calls, some praising, some threatening, a couple anonymous letters demanding Akiko take her woke business elsewhere. That's when things got real interesting. Because instead of backing down, Akiko doubled down, donating to immigrant job programs, funding language classes for hotel workers, sponsoring scholarships for underprivileged kids, not just at the plaza, but citywide. I got pulled into media interviews, asked 100 times if I forgave Sandra, fired for not blending in. Some wrote to say they'd finally spoken up. Some said they were still afraid. But each one reminded me why I kept going. One afternoon, after a marathon negotiation in 3 languages, I took the elevator down to street level for some air. There, at the corner cafe, was the new intern, Lucia, the young Latina I'd pulled out of anonymity, tutoring a fellow Maid in English. They looked up, laughing, waving me over. In that instant, I saw the chain reaction, one small act, echoing, bouncing from person to person, changing lives I might never even meet. That evening, Akiko hosted a dinner for the staff, everyone from the doorman to the kitchen crew. No speeches, just food, laughter, and stories in 5 different languages. Marcus clinked his glass, winked at me, and said, "To the invisible ones, the real backbone of every empire." And for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen. Not as a symbol, not as a survivor, but as a builder, a connector, A woman who turned a moment of humiliation into a revolution that was still unfolding. Across town, Sandra Morrison watched that same news report from a cheap apartment. She flipped the channel, set the remote down, and stared out at the city lights. Maybe she was angry. Maybe she was healing. Maybe just waiting for someone to give her a second chance. I'll never really know. Here's what I do know. Systems don't change overnight. Not everyone learns. Not everyone forgives. And justice doesn't always feel as sweet as people imagine. But every once in a while, one person makes the world a little bit bigger for the next one to step through. So tell me, what would you have done standing in my shoes that day? Would you have spoken up? Would you risk your comfort, your job, your future to do the right thing? Or would you keep your head down and hope someone else would fix it? I want to hear your story. Drop a comment, start a conversation, share the moment you decided to stop being invisible. Because real change, it starts with you.